Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Friday Morning at the Fun House, alongside, of course, Mr. Martin Popoff. How you doing, my
Yes.
friend?
Morning, sir. I'm ready to go. The sun is out. It's drying out a little bit here in Toronto, so it's supposed to get cold again. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, the sun's out here in New York, and I think tomorrow it's also going to be nice, but then Sunday winter's coming back for a
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
I know you guys have had a little bit different weather than us temperature-wise. We've been like in
yeah,
the 50s for a couple of days, but
yeah,
I think today as well and tomorrow. But Sunday chilly again, Monday chilly again, and then like 60 for a couple of days or close
yeah,
to it, like in the middle of
yeah,
next week. Whatever.
yeah.
I
All
still
right.
have a feeling, Martin, like the end of March, we're going to get like a big snowstorm. It's going to be
I
like
know.
25 degrees again
I
and
know.
whammo. And that'll be the final kind of scream from winter before she goes on her
Yeah,
merry
yeah.
way. But we'll see. We'll see. So we've got a fun episode for you here today. So Martin and I have been talking about this whole concept. I think we did an episode a while back where, back ends of the albums were really strong and well, so on and so forth. So we decided to kind of center on the CD era specifically and find albums that are really front loaded. And in many of these cases, or maybe not, we'll see as we go through, uh, albums on CD, because you can have just about 80 minutes of music, doesn't always mean you should have 80 minutes of music. And I think there's a lot of bands who are pretty guilty of saying, well, let's fill up the entire capacity of what a CD delivers. And in some instances, you put all the best songs on the front end. And by the time you get to the back end, well, you're ready to kind of check out. So we kind of looked through our collections and came up with 10 albums each where we feel that is kind of the case. And we got 10. What do we want to do? Our usual Martin, three, three, and
Sure.
one? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I'll start off with Rush counterparts. Oddly, I don't talk about Rush very much these days. So I figured, oh, let's do this one.
Because you don't want to. It's because
I'm
you
so
don't want
rushed
to.
out. Yeah, I get asked a lot of times to be on Rush shows. Like, oh my god, I can't do that. So, anyways, Rush counterparts. I always thought that okay. So what happened was, first of all, "Stick It Out" came out as an advanced single from this, and that was heavy and weird for them. And it put a certain expectation on this album. But when I look at this, what we have here is Animate opens the album, and it's basically, I think people have decided it's the best song on the album. A lot of people also like Nobody's Hero, which is the fourth song on the album. Stick It Out, which I just mentioned, was the advanced single, and that's the second song on the album. And Cut to the Chase even has a pretty good heavy anthemic chorus. So, right off the bat, you've got the four songs, definitely the four songs that everybody talks about the very most on this album as the first four songs on this album. Later in the sequence, second to last, you get Cold Fire, and people quite like that one as well. That's probably the next song of quality that people like on this album. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the middle here that people never talk about, later on in the sequence. Everyday Glories, The Speed of Love, Alien Shore. But yeah, it's got 11 songs on it, and literally the first four songs are the most talked about songs in the album. So that's my first one.
Yeah, I
Uh,
almost picked Test for Echo because I think that also falls into the same thing. I like Alien Shore, which is later on, but I agree with you. I think the first half is so strong. I know for me, it elevates this album in general for me, right? Because I think if you look at it from start to finish, it's kind of spotty on the back end, but because that
yeah,
first half is so strong, I always think, well, it's my favorite Rush album from the 90s and onward, probably because of that front load on this album. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. Excellent. Okay, so my second one is Soundgarden, Bad Motorfinger. So, I feel like some of these we've talked about before, and there's a little bit of a theme that this whole advanced single thing has driven us crazy over the years, right?
Yeah.
So the thing with Bad Motorfinger, this comes out, maybe Jesus Christ Pose wasn't an advanced single. For some reason, I remember seeing the video or something. Anyways, the fact of the matter is, you look at this album, Jesus Christ Pose is pretty much the most talked about song on here. It's got incredible video. What an amazing competition. Just a genius, brilliant kind of heavy metal song, in terms of songwriting. So yeah, that October 8th, 91. Hang on, Jesus Christ Post March 30th, 92. How does my note? Yeah, that's how this works. Yeah. At Rusty Cage, June 8th, 92. So Rusty Cage comes out as a single as well, and that's the first track from the album. And then Outshined is released as a single November 9th, 92. And that's the second track on the album. So you've got Rusty Cage as number one, Outshined as number two, Slaves and Bulldozers, Lesser So, number three, and then Jesus Christ Pose, number four. So the three biggest singles off this album are one, two, and four on this record. And then yeah, it is a long record. Soundgarden is a challenging listen. They can be doomy, bluesy, progressive, geometric, and there's a lot of stuff later on in this album that I just look at the titles and I barely can remember what they sound like, and yet I live with this album so much over there. Yeah, that
And
drives me
I
nuts
want
too.
to a couple of weeks ago, and I don't even remember which show it was on. I incorrectly called that album "Bad Motor Scooter." I don't remember what
Yeah, I
episode.
remember that. Yeah, I remember that. I was
Of
on
course,
that
you
show.
didn't correct me, so I just kept going blathering on. Right?
You always wonder, do you correct the guy or not? Right? Do you sound like a know-it-all, or is it bad form to correct him, or just let it go by? Yeah, you always wonder that, eh? I do it all the time too. I screw up constantly. So, and my last choice from this first tranche is Megadeth Countdown to Extinction. So here we've got the most talked about track, the most famous track on the album is Symphony of Destruction, and that's the second track on the album, and it's the first single. The second single is Foreclosure of a Dream, which comes out October 13th, 92, and that's this. Yeah, so that's the second single. Sweating Bullets is another famous song from this album, and it is the fifth track, and it also was a single. And then Skin of My Teeth. Is also issued as a single, and April 12th, 93, and that's the first track on the album. So you've got in the first five tracks, all four of the singles within the first five tracks from here. Now the quality stands up. I mean, as you move on, there's only 11 songs on it. It's very tight songwriting. It's just beautiful songwriting for Megadeth on this. It's just a really nicely put together album. So the quality stands up. But yeah, to have four of the singles in the first five tracks, pretty crazy.
Yeah, and who's that on? Is that on? That's on the label, right? Because they're pushing it that way. I think it
Well,
makes
yeah,
total.
that's I guess the discussion of this whole thing. It's like who is front loading these things? Do they really think they're front loaded? What comes first? I guess you're picking the songs as a single, and then some. Yes, somebody is putting it at the front of the album, but it's not always the case. And it's yeah, I don't what is the point? I guess is it to keep you hanging around? Is it to give you that false impression, like you just mentioned with the Rush? It was a good point. Is it to give you that false impression that you love this album more than you do, right?
Yeah, and especially in this day and age where these pre-release singles are coming out. Sometimes, half of the album has been released before it actually comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want people to be invested in the whole album from start to finish, you've already introduced two, three, four songs months before the album comes out, so they're already familiar. Why would you put them all in the first half of the CD? Because people are going to just go and listen to that and then check out. Whereas sprinkling them all throughout the album pretty evenly makes the most sense. I never understood why they do that. Just
That's a great point too, because if you're already sick of the songs, maybe that's a good reason not to put them at the front of the CD, even though they are the singles. So as the further they are in advance, yeah, the more bored you're going to be of those ones, right?
yeah. Yeah, I did this whole idea of releasing half the album before it actually comes out. I don't agree with you. You either have a release
Yeah,
date or you don't have a release date.
yeah,
I get one song, right? That's kind of a
yeah,
teaser of what's to come, but I mean, lately it's just gotten ridiculous. It's like
yeah,
you literally know the entire album before it actually comes
yeah,
out.
yeah,
So when it comes out, it's like, all right, whatever. I've already heard the whole thing. Who
yeah,
cares?
yeah.
It's just
Exactly. Yeah.
it's ridiculous. All right, my first choice. I had many to choose from this band, and I ultimately decided to go with one that seems to get a lot of crap from the fan base as one of the least favorites of the more modern era of Iron Maiden, and that's The Final Frontier. So first of all, it's 76 minutes long, right there. That's a lot of music. And for me personally, I think I'm invested in this album right up to including Isle of Avalon, which is track number 6. You know, the front half, you've got the Satellite 15 leading into the title track, which is kind of like, it's kind of long, but it's like instrumental. And then the Bruce kicks in. Really good song. El Dorado was the big song they were pushing on here. Played it live a bit. In fact, the first half of the album you would see live quite a lot. Mother of Mercy is a good track. You got Coming Home. The Alchemist is excellent. And I really like Isle of Avalon too. But then on the back end, you've got Starblind, The Talisman, The Man Who Would Be King, and When the Wind Blows, all like 9, 10, 8 minutes long. And that whole last 4 tracks, it makes up a good chunk of the album. It's a lot to invest in an album as it is. But again, also the songs are more plodding, they're long. By the time you get to like Isle of Avalon, you're kind of like, all right, I'm like, shh, I think I need a break from this. And that's the problem with, I think, a lot of modern Iron Maiden albums. It's just too damn long, and you're putting these big, long, plodding songs at the end and you've got some of the beginning too. By the time you get to the back end of the album, you're just kind of like you got fatigue, right? So,
Yeah,
and
great
I
choice.
think that this album gets a lot of shit because of that, because I actually think the first half is actually pretty strong and enjoyable. But a lot of people are like, oh, the Final Frontier, it's the worst. It's the worst reunion era album or, modern album. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of good stuff on here, but it's just too damn long. It's just the way it's kind of laid out. It just doesn't really work.
Yeah,
That's my
great.
first album pick. Second up, I'm going to go with Angel of Retribution by Judas Priest. So here, of course, this is the big comeback album. It's a pretty damn good one. It's 52 minutes. That's not bad. I think, for most people would agree nowadays that like 40 to 50 minutes is probably like what you want from an album. And, people were excited though, because the first album with Halford back starts off absolutely amazing. The first track is Judas Rising, which is the song they were pushing on here. Great track, great live track. You got Deal with the Devil, really strong. Revolution is really good, worth fighting for. Demonizer, terrific track. Then you get to the second half, you got Wheels of Fire. Wheels of Fire is pretty good. Angels kind of mellow. Hellrider's really good. And then the back end, you got Eulogy and Loch Ness. Loch Ness is like 10 plus minutes. Eulogy is really mellow. Angel is mellow. Again, you're putting all the bangers in the front end, and the last half's got the experimental, long, mellow stuff. I don't know if that's really such a good idea. For me, I love listening to the first half. I kind of check out about the midway point on here. And
Yeah,
again, a lot of those second half songs they kind of ignored live as well. So yeah, Angel of Retribution. And my next choice is, again, kind of like the Priest, another like kind of change of lineup, new step forward type of thing. Dream Theater, a dramatic turn of events. So this, of course, is the first album post Mike Portnoy leaving the band. Mike Mangini comes in. It's another long one. It's 77 minutes long. Starts off really good. You got On the Backs of Angels, really good. Build Me Up, Break Me Down, Lost Not Forgotten, This Is the Life. Bridges in the Sky is really good. It's all high energy, melodic, intricate Dream Theater like you would expect. Outcry is really cool musically, lots of good stuff going on there. But then you got Far From Heaven, pretty mellow. Breaking All Illusions is like almost 13 minutes long. Decent enough, has some good parts. Beneath the Surface is pretty mellow and kind of just like meandering. Again, it's another one of those albums, like 77 minutes long. Would have been a really good hour-long album. And the first half you're invested, you're like, Mangini sounds great. Like, oh, Dream Theater are back. They don't lose a beat, but it's too long and just loses your interest like towards the back end of the album. So again, cutting it back 10, 15 minutes. I think you have a banger of an album here. But as is, it's like it's a little bit of a slog to get all the way through. So that's my first pick.
nice. Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyways. I mean, the obviously the big thing we've got going with these back front loaded CDs versus front loaded albums. With front loaded albums, you've got 4 discussion points, kind of thing. You get the first track, the end of side one. You get the first track on side two, the end of side two. Right? What ends the whole album? But still, there's the mini ending of side one. With CDs, it just goes on and on and on. There's no tactileness. With a record, you were watching that thing spin. You had to put it on. You can see where the needle was on it. With a CD, it's just shoved in some machine somewhere. So you can't you have no sort of interaction with the physical media itself. You've got the booklet,
Yeah.
but so that's the other thing with it, right?
There's more. There's
You're
more.
not
I think
seeing
there's
anything. right?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
more of a plan, I think, with the track sequencing of an album, right? Because you want to start it off strong, right? So side A's got to start off strong, and a lot of instances you got to finish side B off really good because it's like, all right, you got to get up and you got to go and turn the record over. But if that first side is really, I'm going to go back to the old days when Moving Pictures came out. Side one is so great. How many times did we go and say like, all right, I'm going to replay that over again because it's so good. It starts off great, it ends really good rather than turning it over. And I was guilty of just replaying side one over and over and over again because it's so good. But also in the album days, you had side two had to start off with a bang and the album had to end with a bang, right? You
Yes, and you
can't
bring
really
up
do
a
that
good
with
point.
CD.
It's much easier if you're feeling lazy to just pick up the tone arm and move it back rather than
Flip the
take
whole
the
thing
tone arm,
over.
take it off, flip the album over and put the tone arm back on,
Yeah.
right?
And
Yeah.
I think, that art is lost on the CD age. And I think, as we were talking about before, I think a lot of record labels have gotten lazy and they just figure, well, you know what? We know there's like 67 minutes of music here. So let's make it as strong as possible in the first half so that people will want to stay through all the way to the end.
Mhm.
Because if we put too many of the maybe lesser tracks in the beginning, we're going to lose them all together. They're not going to want to finish. That could be the rationale. I don't really know. It doesn't
Yeah.
always work, though.
It's funny. I'm thinking in my head, it's got to be at least 15 years since I've ever said tone arm. And I'm thinking, is that what it's called? I
I
almost
don't
forgot.
know. I only just recently got a turntable. So I don't know what the hell
I
it's
think
all
it's
called.
called a tone arm, right? I guess I literally haven't said that for years and years and years. It's like when I get a book order, right? I'll see a name or like the name of the city somewhere in some state, and I just know for sure I've never sent a book there before. I know this is a new person who's not bought a book from me, and it's amazing how you know that you know whether you've typed a name before or whatever, right,
Sure.
or a word, right? I say that all the time when I'm even talking. It's like I know this is the first time I've ever used that word, kind of thing, right? All right, so my next choice is Metallica, "Hardwired to Self Destruct." Hardwired to Self Destruct. So
And I have the
this came
pause
out,
there. Hardwired
yeah,
to self-destruct.
it's so complicated, right? You got hardwired with no dash, you got self-destruct with a dash, you've got an ellipsis in there with no space, and you got a double CD. But is it a double CD? Because there's a bonus CD, And I actually went the other day and I was like trying to Google, like nobody answers these things, nobody knows the answers to these things, right? How many of them have the bonus CD and how many of them don't, right? No one ever talks about this stuff, right? Anyways, so this came out November 18th, 2016. The first single, talk about your, Judas Priest type situation. Hardwired gets issued as a single August 18th, 2016. So we're about 3 months before. Moth into Flame gets released as a pre-release single September 26th, 2016. So about 2 months before. And Atlas Rise gets released as a pre-release single October 31st, 2016. So you've got 3 singles all out before the album is out. And those happen to be tracks 1, 2, and 4. And then you've got the next single is Now That We're Dead, which happens to be track 3. And then Spit Out the Bone is late in the sequence. So out of the 5 singles from this album, all of the first 4 tracks are singles. And they are generally speaking more immediate songs anyways. So and yeah, this is a super long album. You've got
Yeah.
a pile of long songs here, and it goes 2 CDs. I don't know what the total length is on here, but anyways, yeah, that's a perfect example of this. My next one is Robert Plant, "Fate of Nations," and so this comes out May 25th, 93, and the lead single is 29 Palms, which is the 5th track, and that's an advanced single. So that's April 93. So yeah, it's about a month early. The 4th track on the album is I Believe, and everybody kind of remembers that one, and that was a single as well, June 93. And then Calling to You is the most famous, the most talked about song on Fate of Nations. It's the most Zeppelin-esque, it's the heaviest, and that is the very first song on the album, right? And then you've got a 4th single and that also was a single. And then you've got a 4th single from the album, If I Were a Carpenter, which is the 7th track. It's a cover, came out December 93. So you've got Calling to You, Down by the Sea, People Remember, Come Into My Life, I Believe, 29 Palms. So that's the first 5 out of the 11, and then the last single comes at track 7. So there's 4 tracks at the end that are not singles, and they're kind of hard to remember. So Fate of Nations. I've got one more, right? Hang on.
Yep.
One, two, one more. Okay, so my next one is this one, Ozzy Osbourne, No More Tears.
Good.
And from here, we've got a situation where we've got a hard hitting opener that everybody kind of remembers because it's got a flashy title, Mr. Tinker Train, kind of a weird title, right? But you've also got the second song, even though it was not a single, I Don't Want to Change the World. It was a promo single in the UK. And from Live and Loud, it won a Grammy from the, with the cool grill on it, live album they did. So that's a famous one as well, famous enough. And then the most famous, or one of the most famous songs on the album is the big corporate ballad, Mama, I'm Coming Home. Pretty well done. Desire, not so much, 4th track. And then the most famous song on the album, the masterpiece of the album, No More Tears, is the 5th track on the album. So yeah, you've got Mr. Tinker Train, I Don't Want to Change the World, Mama, I'm Coming Home, Desire, No More Tears. So you've got the 2 biggest hits on the album, and then yeah, it kind of goes downhill a little more. Way at the end, you've got Road to Nowhere on here as well. I don't know, this album to me, I'm starting to feel it's a little overrated. People love this album to death, but man, it is so committee and corporate and massive and just soaked in the music industry, right? It just doesn't feel like a band anymore at this point.
I've been saying it for years, Martin. For me personally, you take away the title track on there, it's a really mediocre album. But I think because of that song and the big ballad, that's the reason why everybody focuses on that record. Because get rid of both of those,
Yeah.
it's not very good. It's
Yeah.
not. I think it's incredibly overrated.
Great. Good one. Nice.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that. Glad to hear you backing me up on that.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
totally agree. I think the title track is amazing. Other than that, I don't really have much replay value on that album for whatever reason. I
Right.
don't know. It sounds good. It's kind of squeaky clean. The production's nice, but yeah, it's no.
Yeah.
All right. My next one, released in July of 1994, Rolling Stones Voodoo Lounge. So this is a really interesting one. So there's a lot of songs on it. There's like 15 songs on here. That's a lot. And I think the band were going for a kind of a vibe on this record that would take you back to like the late 60s and the early 70s. There's a lot of rootsy stuff, a lot of kind of bluesy, jangly rockers and things like that. But to your point about releasing singles and having them and where they sit on the actual album, so by the album's release in July up and through November of that year, 1994, Love is Strong, You Got Me Rockin', Out of Tears, I Go Wild were all released as singles. They're
Wow.
all in the front half of the CD.
It's amazing. You just say those titles and I can play all of them in my head. And I bet there's not a single song beyond that I can play in my head.
Well, let's find out. Brand New Car,
Yeah, no, no.
Sweethearts Together, Suck
No.
on the Jugular, Blinded by Rainbows, Baby Break It Down, Through and Through, Mean Disposition.
Yeah, exactly. Proven. Yeah. Yeah.
I went and re-listened to this album yesterday, and I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, from like Brand New Car and onward, I'm just kind of like, I don't remember any of these songs at all, and they're all kind of like faceless, just kind of there. Again, like whose idea was that? So let's put all the tracks that we want people to focus on at the first half, and don't give anybody any reason to investigate further. I'm not saying they're bad songs on the back half, but they're just kind of like nondescript. It's like whatever.
Yeah. It's funny hearing you say Voodoo Lounge, and I'm going, is it called that or is it called Voodoo Lounge? Right? How many albums do we have that somebody kind of puts the accent on a different word in the title than someone else? Right? You hear that all the time too. It's
All the
like,
time.
fun. Yeah.
All right, next up, kind of like a sort of a reunion album for Whitesnake, Good to Be Bad. From what year was this? 2008, I believe. So this is the new line. Got Doug Aldridge on guitar. Pretty rocking album. The first half, again, let's throw the singles out there. You got Best Years kicks it off. That was one of the singles. You got Can You Hear the Wind Blow? Really, really good track. Call on Me. All I Want, I Need. Another song that was getting pushed quite a bit. You got the title track. And then you got All for Love. Too many love songs on here, right? All for Love, Summer Rain, that's kind of mellow. And then the other track that weirdly enough, this one kind of goes against everything we've been talking about. Lay Down Your Love, another love track. Pretty cranking song. They had a video for that. They released that as a single. That's at the back end, but then you got A Fool in Love, Got What You Need, and The End of Time. Kind of loses steam towards the back end. And this is one of those weird instances where one of the singles is actually in the back end, but to me, it kind of saves the back end because the rest of it is not all that interesting. Really good album otherwise, but again, it's long. There's 11 tracks. It's pushing an hour as it is, but pretty good overall. Next up, I'm going to go with the Allman Brothers Band, Where It All Begins. So this is right at the beginning of the craze of the CD era. This is what, 94. You got the ones that they were pushing on the radio. So you got Back Where It All Begins, the title track. You got Soul Shine. That's track number 3 and 4. All Night Train was a good rocker to lead off the album. You got Sailing Across the Devil's Sea, which gives you all those kind of bluesy, kind of psychedelic dream theater moments. No One to Run With was another single, right? So that's track number 5. So right there, you got 3 songs in the first 5, which were singles. Then from that movement on, you got Change My Way of Living, track number 6, kind of mellow, kind of bluesy. Mean Woman Blues, more bluesy. Everybody's Got a Mountain to Climb, more bluesy stuff. What's Done is Done, and Temptation is a Gun. Good songs, but very all kind of similar from each other. The livelier, more catchy and melodic stuff is all on the front end. The back is all for kind of the blues purists. Again, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to do it that way, but whatever. And
Yeah.
then my next choice is an album that I think for a lot of Mastodon fans probably was the one album where you saw a little blip on the radar for the first time. They rebounded well after this. Looking back, not really a bad album. The Hunter by Mastodon. So this is the album where they decided to try some different things musically, maybe tone down the technicality and the progressive nature of the albums that came before it. And it starts off good. Black Tongue is a really good track. Curl of the Burl is fun. Blasteroid is fun. Then you got like Stargasm and Octopus Has No Friends. All the heavy lifting. They're doing this kind of like moody, almost Alice in Chains type of thing, but it really works. And then you get a lot of like plotting stuff in the backhand of the album. You got the title track, which is pretty good. Then Dry Gone Valley, Thickening Creature Lives, Spectre Light, Bedazzled Fingernails, The Sparrow. There's a lot of songs. They're all over the place stylistically wise. I think for the loyal fans, the first half is most sounding like what you'd expect from Mastodon. Then the back half is all sorts of weird experimental stuff that kind of had us all puzzling back in the day, saying, okay, well, where are they going here? Why is this so different than the album before? So maybe it's a sequencing thing. I don't think this album is sequenced all that great. It's a little long as it is, but they put out lots of long albums. So yeah, good first half, decent second half, although they put all the weird stuff at the back end. Doesn't make much sense to me. So if you're already like 2 or 3 songs into the back end and you're kind of like, I don't know what's going on here, you're turning it off and checking out, and that's never a good thing.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. All right. So my next choice, I'm going to go with Motley Crue. Motley Crue. The one album with John Corabi, issued March 15th, 94. It opens with Power to the Music, which is a big anthemic song. It's kind of hits you right away. You're bathed in this new bizarre sound. It's just very wide open and atmospheric and dirty and grungy compared to Dr. Feelgood. And then you've got Uncle Jack, which is a known song, but was not a single. But the third track on the album, Hooligan's Holiday, was an advanced single, February 94, and I've got at least one, if not 2 or 3 different weird, picture sleeve single versions of this. They went all out on the marketing of this album, right? And then Misunderstood, which is the 4th track on the album, that was released as a single, May 12th, 94. So You've got Power to the Music, Uncle Jack, Hooligan's Holiday, and Misunderstood all at the beginning, and then the rest of it. It almost feels it's a little bit like what he said about Mastodon. And I wonder, and one of my future ones coming up later on the list is this idea that I wonder if once you get it, and it's a little bit challenging, if you just got a natural sense of fatigue that's going to set in. So they hit you with all the singles right away. I don't know. I mean, because, it can be this version of Motley Crue is a little shocking to people. People love this album. It's a lot of people say it's their favorite Motley Crue album, which is kind of a diss to Vince Neil, I suppose. More
Oh, big time. Yeah.
yeah. but it is challenging. I mean, and the whole album does have that same sort of challenging, dirty, grungy, grinding sort of production. So there you go, Motley Crue. My next choice is Van Halen Balance. So this one here. So we've got a situation where you've got an advanced single. So the album comes on January 24th, 95. You've got an advanced single in Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do, which is a good heavy stomping, but also kind of grungy and dark sort of song. Can't Stop Loving You was a kind of an up-tempo, schmaltzy ballad kind of thing from this. It had a video, but that's track number 2. And then you've got, so that was a single, March 10th, 95. And then you've got Amsterdam, which was released in the UK as a single, June 26th, 95. That's track 3. And that's just a good quality, straightforward rocker. And then you've got Not Enough, which is a ballad, and that was released as a single. So that's track 7 of 12. Okay, so we're getting a little further. But other than that, yeah, you've got the Seventh Seal opening it up. So the big epic, right, with the monks chanting. I always thought it was funny. You had these monks chanting at the exact same time Iron Maiden did the same thing on one of the Blaze albums, right? But yeah, you start with Seventh Seal, Can't Stop Loving You, Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do, and Amsterdam. And then even Big Fat Money at track 5 is a straightforward, fast sort of song. And they put the instrumentals, the instrumental filler things, right, are tracks 6, 9, and 10. So 9 and 10, they are definitely moving those towards the back. So that's another one there.
If I remember correctly, Martin, wasn't Amsterdam also a video? Even though they really didn't make it as a set, could have sworn that there was a video.
I can't quite remember, but it's just.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even talked about that, and especially for these 80s and 90s albums, video played a big part in a lot of these too. So a lot of the ones that are on the front half of the album also had videos for it too, in many of these instances. So
yeah, just the big dumb lyrics about going to Amsterdam.
Yeah, big deal. I mean, I dig the song, but yeah, it's a good choice. I wanted that up for grabs as well. That's a good
album. Okay, so my number 2, I went with Sepultura, Chaos AD. And the interesting thing about this one is you've got, I put it super high on here because I wanted these somewhat to get a little more intense and make the point even more as we go forward. But the funny thing here is you've got track 1, Refuse to Resist, is the first single. Track 2, Territory, is the second single. Track 3, Slave New World, is the third single. So September 5th, October 5th, May 25th, 94. So that's crazy. And, this makes me think of our good buddy Monty Connor, who is so adamant about, and he's involved in the Sepultura story big time. Yeah. He's very adamant about the CDs being front loaded, and it's a good thing to front load CDs. He says, yeah, take all your best songs, put them at the front. He really ascribes to that sort of thing. And he's a music executive. He's an A&R guy. He wears the A&R hat. So it would be interesting to hear him kind of explain the whole reasoning that. But I wanted to pick them also because I feel like Roots, my Roots is up on the wall up high. I don't have the front cover, but there's the back cover. Roots is kind of the same way. Because you've got Roots, Bloody Roots, Attitude, Cutthroat, Ratamatata, all at the front. The most famous song really on here is Roots, Bloody Roots, I would say. But again, you're just hit with banger after banger right at the beginning of this album as well. So, and my final choice for today is Pantera, Vulgar Display of Power. So this one, I wanted to put Pantera tops, and I actually took out all my Pantera CDs. So we get your Cowboys from Hell here. We've got your Far Beyond Driven. We've got your Great Southern Trendkill, and we've got your Reinventing the Steel, right? So the point with all these is that, remember we did that show about that. Just give me the greatest hits album. I'm a Poser fan. Just give me the greatest hits, right? Pantera is really like that for me in some ways. It's like all my favorite songs are all the hits. Basically, they're all amazing songs, and they do tend to front load them. And when we look at Vulgar, we've got Mouth for War, which is an absolute masterpiece, right? They're two just off the top of your, off the blow off the top of your head masterpieces are Mouth for War and Cowboys from Hell, right? Just compositionally, hooky wise, just incredible, incredible songs. But you also get a new level. You get Walk, super famous song, Fucking Hostile, super famous song, This Love, super famous song, all at the front of this album. But I wanted to put them number one because I swear every single one of these Pantera albums is front loaded real
They
nicely.
are.
So there you go. That's my
I
top
had them on
four.
my list too. I couldn't decide which album to pick because they all kind of fall into.
Yeah.
They're one of these bands, Martin, and again, we talked about it before, that they're not a fantastic deep cut band. They do have some good ones, but I agree with you. I think their most notable songs are far their best songs. The ones that the record label and the band want you to love, they're great songs.
Yeah.
You try to you search throughout the rest of the catalog and you're like, yeah, there's some good deep cuts here and there, but they're not, one of these bands are like, oh, there's so many gems in their catalog that were, the non-hits, the deep cuts.
Yeah,
The
it's a
songs we
good
know
point.
are the great ones.
This was the band I was referencing when we were talking about Mastodon because I feel they're such rebels and they have a such a non-commercial streak that they kind of tend to take that back half of the albums to prove their street credibility of being obscure and noisy and stuff. I've always said that about Dime. Dime reminds me of what's his name, Vernon Reed from Living Color, right? They're just really noisy and atonal and not really easy on the ears. Dime soloing, I'm not a big fan of Dime soloing almost ever. I love his riff writing, but his soloing could just be really high and squeaky, almost like a black metal approach to it, right? He just wants to make a lot of crazy noises, right? And not be incredibly melodic quite often. So and it just feels like they want to have enough songs on the album that almost seem like pushback to the industry. It's like you're going to get the Pantera sound, but you're going to get our obscure and a little bit off-putting version of the Pantera sound.
Yeah. Yeah, Dime is I mean, I like his lead playing, but I think he's a much better riff guy. He was a terrific riff guy, one of the best ever, I think. Yeah, he could be very noisy. That was kind of his thing. Yeah, Vernon Reed's another one. Man, that guy, he's all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I just realized that I did four on my last round.
Yes, I know. I know. Noted that too. So you got three left, right?
I got three left. Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. All right. My number eight is the Flower Kings, Rainmaker. I got to pick on some prog bands here because they're notorious for doing this. So this is a perfect example of how more is not always better. This band is notorious for really long CDs. They've got double CDs that are pushing the boundaries of the two CD format. But this one here, this is God, what is this? 80 minutes, just about 80 minutes long. Uh, it's completely front loaded. And what's interestingly enough is that the front half of the CD has the big epic tracks, which are all pretty damn good. And then the whole second half is filled with shorter songs that aren't as good. So they're known for doing their epics. So they put them all at the front. And then it doesn't give you a lot of reason to listen to the rest of it. So it's got The Last Minute on Earth, first song, just under 12 minutes long. It's terrific. One of their great songs. World Without a Heart, a little bit shorter. Then you got Road to Sanctuary, 14 minutes long. Really good song. The Rainmaker, the title track, 6 minutes. Really good. City of Angels, 12 minutes long. Great track. You know what? They could have stopped there, Martin.
Mhm.
Because from there, we've got Elaine, Through the Walls, Sword of God, that's pretty good. And then Blessing of a Smile, Red Alert, and Serious Dreamer. None of them, right now, if you ask me what do those sound like, I couldn't tell you because they're just very nondescript. But the first half is so good. So again, let's lead off with all of our epic tracks and really the best stuff on here. Did this need to be 80 minutes? You could have cut it after Through the Walls, Sword of God. I mean, cut 20 minutes out of this, 15
Mhm.
minutes out of it. Would have been, it's still a pretty damn good album because that front half is so damn good. So, all right, next up is Spock's Beard, Feel Euphoria. So this is the first Spock's Beard album after Neil Morse left, and they moved Nick DiVirgilio from behind the drum kit to the vocal slot, kind of like the Genesis story all over again, because he always sang backup on all the early Spock's Beard albums. Really good voice. They also allowed him the luxury of picking up the slack of the songwriting. So you've got the first half of the album is just a bunch of random songs. They're really good, but the whole band kind of took part in the writing. So you've got, Onomatopoeia, The Bottom Line, Feel Euphoria, Shining Star, East of Eden, West of Memphis, and Ghost of Autumn, which are all, again, normal length songs. Everybody's writing good stuff. You can hear the band is moving into different directions musically a little bit. This album is not a full-on prog album. It's a little bit more straightforward rock. There's even like an alternative vibe. And then the whole back end of the album is like this big long suite called A Guy Named Sid, which all written by Nick. It's totally got his vibe to the whole thing, and it's pretty long. Again, do you finish off an album with a big long epic like that? That's kind of from one perspective within the band. I don't know. I think this album, it's a little too long, first of all, and maybe right off the bat, it's just a little bit too much of Nick's influence. I remember at the time not really liking this all that much, but listening back on it now, the first half is really, really good. Sounds more like a band album, but not terrible at all. And then last but not least, speaking of putting big epics at the back end of an album, Cathedral, the Garden of Unearthly Delights. First half crushes like your typical Cathedral album. It's got all the shorter, doomy tracks, stoner tracks, lots of groovy Death AD, Tree of Life and Death, Upon Azrael's Wings, Corpse Cycle, all really good stuff. And then the whole back half of the album is The Garden, all like 27 minutes long of it. It's a lot to take in. It's doomy, it's proggy, it's psych, it meanders all over the place. I don't know what a good idea that is, especially when you have such a strong first half of the album, which is just regular songs, and you put that big monstrosity at the end. They could have easily cut that in half and knocked off a good chunk of this album to me. But yeah, I think if you're gonna put something like that on the album, you might as well start it off with that and hope that people get through that to get to the rest of the album, or maybe that'll just turn people off altogether. I don't know. But to me, I think great songs in the beginning. Title track, I think it's adventurous. Give him credit for attempting it, but man, just way too long for me. So that's
What a
my last
great
pick.
choice. I mean, just as a band in general, it's like I think Cathedral, when they're on a tear, they're the very best doom band on the planet, right? But the funny thing is, most of those Cathedral albums, I just remember, every time I play them, and it's pretty regularly, right? I do play three or four or five songs, and then I move on. And it's almost like it's like, I mean, A, they probably are front loaded, but B, I wonder if when you're playing a CD, say you're driving around on a long car trip or something, maybe you get your fill of a band in five songs. And if those five songs happen to be the first five songs and you're lazy and you're just starting the CD from the beginning, maybe you just get your fill after a while and okay, I've got my Cathedral concept fulfilled. Let's move on to
Well,
something else.
we haven't talked about it, but that brings up a really good point. So maybe with certain types of music, Doom, we'll use Doom as an example. We can do Prog as well, since I just covered a couple of those. For a casual fan of that style of music, is 75 minutes of Doom too much if you're not hugely invested in that style of music? Is
Mhm.
77 minutes of a Flower Kings album where you've got all these long songs and whatnot, is
Yeah,
75 minutes just after 35, 40 minutes? All right, I'm good. I'm going to go listen to a Madonna record, right? I mean, it's just,
yeah,
I mean, you have to take that into consideration too.
yeah,
It's like with these different types of music where, you've got, you know, I mean, let's be real. A Cathedral album, the tempo of most of these songs, you could use them, you could use Trouble. It's all kind of the same. So
yeah,
unless you're like a massive fan of that style of music, is an hour long of Cathedral way too much?
yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
So
Cool.
you're right. You're right. After that fourth song or so, you're like, all right, I'm good. I need something that's a little more uplifting and
Yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
They've grinded me down. I'm now depressed. Now I got to go play Eat 'em and Smile.
Or listening to a half hour of the Flower Kings, you're like, all right, I've heard enough guitar and
Yeah.
keyboard solos to last me a couple of weeks. I'm gonna go listen to Eddie Money or something like
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
I need a palate cleanser, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Cool. Nice.
Interesting
Okay.
topic. All right, so Martin, get us caught up on what's going on over at the Contrarians and the podcasts. I need to get used to saying that because you got multiple podcasts now, new books and things like that.
Yeah, I'd like people to check out the audio podcast, History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff. The one I do with John Gaffney, Kicked in the Teeth and ACDC podcast. We've got the Contrarians channel, and I've got two series. This is going there. The Reliving Old Reviews is a useless tool of confusion. I've done 70 episodes of that or so now. And we've got Who Invented Heavy Metal, where I'm looking at all the building block original albums. And we're still in the 60s with that. I've done 4 or 5 of that. And I've written a bunch of books, of course, martinpopoff.com for that.
Cool. Any new books ready to hit soon that you can give a little teaser
Well,
on?
let's see. What am I allowed to mention? So definitely the massive Iron Maiden 666 page full color throughout $60 book plus a beast edition that's 200 or something. It's the putting together of all three of my indie ones together and expanded. So that's the biggest book I've ever done. It's hundreds of thousands of words. So that's coming out. Also, announced through Schiffer is my Dio book called The Unholy Scriptures, the unofficial story or something of the Dio band. So that's my previously, two Dio books put together and slightly expanded. And again, full color throughout. So those two. Guns N' Roses at 40. That's coming out shortly, I think June, through Motor Books. So that's like the hardcover coffee table books. My old Sweet book is being reissued through my UK publisher, Weimer. We're calling it Blockbuster now, and I've updated that, dusted it off a little. My Merciful Fate book's coming back, and my Max Webster book is coming back, and both of those are through Weimer. New cover, updated, new stuff added. That's about all I can announce. There's about one, two, three. There's at least three other really big ones that I can't announce yet. That they're probably 2026 books.
Cool. Lots going on.
Yeah.
Good to hear. Good to hear. All right, what do we got going on here on the channel? I'm actually going to give a little bit of an announcement here because we got something pretty special coming up later today. So first of all, we've got the Professor's Picks coming up at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. So check in and see what's releasing today in prog and metal and all that sort of stuff with Ken Golden and myself. Tonight, I'm going to be talking to Sabotage. So tune in later today for a chat with Chris Caffrey, and I'm not sure who else. Maybe it's Jeff Plate. I don't know who else is joining tonight. I know it's Chris and someone else. And we'll be talking about all the news happening with Sabotage, new album, tour, live dates, all that sort of thing. So we'll get the skinny from the guys tonight here on the channel. Tomorrow we've got
Nice.
Jamie Laszlo and the review crew. And Sunday I will be ranking the albums of Kim Mitchell along with Chad Hutchinson and Eric Porter from In the Prog Seats. So Kim Mitchell, guitarist and vocalist from Max Webster, coming at you on Sunday. So thanks for watching. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Also, we got Hudson Valley Squares coming up on Monday night, so do not miss that. And we'll see you then for all that stuff. For Martin Popoff, I am Pete Pardo. See you back here in 2 weeks at the Fun House. Till then, have a good weekend. Bye-bye.